Lauren Brown. Today, we're talking about time management for visual artists and creators, and how that crucial element of your working process can determine whether or not you get anything done or whether or not you've wasted an entire day. So I guess we can start off just talking about, well, I'll ask you, Mia, because you really need to know time management. You really have to have your stuff down at this point, hopefully, to do what you're doing. But like, what are you doing? What do you do to when you wake up in the morning? What's your process?
Oh man, when I wake up in the morning, I actually lie in bed for an hour, which is horrible, but it's like I literally get my emails out of the way. I read the news, I catch up on kind of social stuff because I put that shit away for the rest of the day. But I think part of it too, it's like I need to get up faster than that. But you know, I think everyone has their own process and whatever works for them. And for me, it's kind of like gearing up to face the day because there's a lot that's going to happen. And definitely like my time management has been all over the place for the last 13 years. Like it's changed so many times and morphed into what it is now. And I guess the reason why I'm bringing up that at first is because, just as a massive disclaimer, like everything we're going to talk about here is what works for us. And we're all very different people with very different temperaments, with very different careers too, you know? Mm-hmm. And in every stage of your life as well, it's like there's different demands on your time and the different priorities that you have. And so, at least for me, it's been less, I think it's just been learning more like, oh, wow, there's nothing wrong with me and how I do things. It's just adapting to the way that my life is going and making sure that I'm in control instead of everything going on in my life being in control of me, you know? And that's kind of how I define time management, is if I can get everything done that I need to do without feeling like I'm underwater all the time, which has been a big part of my life, you know? That's a win, you know, and it's evolving over time. But that's kind of like my general attitude towards it. If you want, we can kind of go in depth a bit later, but that's kind of what I would define it as, I guess, for me.
For me,
go ahead.
Yeah, for me, it's also the same thing where it can be all over the place depending on where I am at that particular point in my life. But it's funny because I was always one of those people who hoped that I would be the one to wake up in the morning, get up all early, have my coffee, and then, you know, sit and draw for a few hours and get all this stuff done before noon. That's not how I operate. That never happens, like, ever. And I always like fantasize about that lifestyle as if that was the ideal thing to do. And there is no ideal. It's the ideal is what works for you. And just like Mia was saying, your time management is going to depend on how you function and how you process, you know, the world. What hours are you the most productive during? What hours do you like to eat during or relax during? Like, what works for you? So it really takes understanding yourself and knowing yourself and being honest with yourself and being like, okay, I know I'm not an early riser, but that's okay, because if I wake up later, go to bed later, maybe those are the hours that I'm most productive. And so maybe that's something that's necessary for me to function. For me, as somebody who's worked for full time for the last 10 years, obviously I haven't been able to have that amount of control over my schedule. So oftentimes what I've had to do is, if I had to do personal art or freelance, I would have to reserve an amount of time after work to dedicate to doing my personal stuff. I would always try to separate my full-time job with 2 hours of padding between that start of, you know, work, which means that I would usually start at about 9 p.m. and then be up until midnight, you know, doing whatever I needed to do. That started to contribute to a little bit of burnout. So I started having to take it even more easy. But yeah, it's fluctuating every time. But something I'm realizing is that if I make time for certain things that I need to do, then I'll get them done. But it's the making time part of it that's right now the struggle for me. So that's currently where I'm at. I'm curious to hear about how your system is, Eric.
Well, like both of you, it's everybody's different. Everybody's time management process is going to be a little different, but um, before I had a family, I would roll out of bed at like 10 a.m. Um, binge watch a couple episodes of my favorite TV show on Netflix and eat breakfast and then start my day. And but then I would work until straight through until like 10 o'clock at night and then realize, oh, I haven't eaten dinner, you know, eat dinner and then go back and still be up until like two in the morning doing stuff.
Mood.
Yeah, like I always felt really productive in the evening, and that was something that carries over to now. But um, I was deathly afraid of not being able to get anything done, or that I wasn't going to be able to uh, have a career or figure out some kind of work-life balance um, with a family, with a child.
Mhm.
And I remember asking other illustrators that had families, like, how do you do it? What do you do? I'm just used to focusing on, myself and just getting up, doing what I have to do, and then going to bed when I feel like it. But now I have to um, arrange my time around a little human being. And I found with the addition of that added responsibility, it focused my mind
Hmm.
to be able to say, okay, you really don't need to binge watch all these shows in the morning. You could calm down on this. You don't need to spend this much time playing video games in the middle of your workday, right? All of the all of that time that I was wasting um, got refocused either into my professional work, or it was quality time that I was now giving to my family. Um, so I ended up talking to other illustrators that had put together uh, like not Word documents, but uh, some kind of scheduling chart where they were that was making them accountable for how they were spending their time. They would have alerts. Some people I've talked to had alerts on their phone. You should be doing this by this time each day, right? And I had to do that initially so that I got into a routine and so that it would become habit. Like, okay, by this time every single day, you need to be at your computer. Because I don't punch a clock. I'm not, I don't have a boss over my shoulder. So I really have to make sure that um, I'm accountable for my own time. But um, yeah, that's really been how it's been for me. Is well, plus I teach during the day, and so I have set times where I need to be teaching. But just like you, Lauren, my when my day shift is over, when my day my teaching job is over, that's where I'm uh, switching gears and doing my freelance work in the evenings. But then I just can't immediately switch gears
Yeah.
and say, okay, well, after my commute home or whatever, I'm going to dive right in, or I'll eat dinner first and then dive into this. There's dinner, there's family time, there's all that other stuff that goes into my evening. And then from like 9, maybe sometimes even 10 o'clock to maybe 1 in the morning, that's where I'm productive. So I've learned to paint really fast out of necessity, because you just have to. Uh, but then
Yeah.
I just that's just been my um, that's what's been working for me. You know.
Yeah. A lot of my experiences was like, and first off, I can't imagine having to manage my time with a child, with a whole person. I am, I am an island amongst myself, so I only have to manage one thing. And that's already hard enough. But I feel like you do start to force yourselves to adapt out of necessity because you have to do what you have to do to survive. And so creating that necessity sometimes, if you don't have that already, can be a way to force yourself to do time management. For example, the way that I would do that to create that necessity is well, I guess not when I was younger because I'm still doing it, but I would start to just sign up for conventions because that was a definite deadline. That was something that I had to work towards in order to keep me doing personal art. And so it forced me to go into that kind of panic state of, oh God, there's something due. I need to make sure things are done by this date so that I can send them out to get printed by this date. And it would essentially guarantee that I was doing personal work because after coming home from a full-time job, I would often be too tired to want to do anything at all aside from just sit on the couch and watch TV. So in order to keep myself productive doing personal work, I would have to force myself to make deadlines and to give myself concrete things to work towards so that I could do it. But I feel like whatever is in your schedule, whatever's in your way, you do have to figure out a way to work around it or prioritize your time a little bit better because you have something to do. For you, Eric, you have a family, so you have to prioritize time for them. And then you have a job, so you have to prioritize time towards that. And then you have to teach. So it's like all these layers, and you have to figure out how to be more adaptable. So it's really interesting to hear that, like, obviously artists, there's many artists who have families and children, and they're still doing art. So it's definitely not impossible. But I think it's just understanding that it kind of makes the time in the day much more concrete. It's like you can't waste this time because you have to use it for doing these necessity tasks, like like feed the child, or like go to the park with them, or do your job, or etc. So it kind of compartmentalizes it a little bit better. So
Yeah.
it's really interesting.
I I was watching a stand-up comic talking about how he gets in trouble when he like wanders off and like disappears from his family for a couple of minutes or an hour or something like that. But I get in trouble where I'm supposed to be having quality time, and if they're all on a device, I just go, oh sweet, I'm going to my studio. And then
No.
I swear, as soon as I sit down and like start doing something, it's where are you? Like, daddy. And I'm like, oh my God. But
You don't get a moment.
right. So I I have to learn, I'm trying to learn to stop trying to sneak in a couple of brushstrokes here and there and just um I don't want to say do my time.
Oh my God.
Don't say it like that.
But just be present. That's been the thing, especially when I'm on a high profile, really important job or a really stressful deadline where it's constantly on my mind, composing an image in my head while I'm actively trying to feed my son, right? And or have somebody say something to me and be in another world, literally. Like, I have no idea what anybody's just saying to me, right? That's been something I've been trying to correct in myself and just say, okay, well, regardless of the deadline, regardless of the stress, I have to be where I am right now. I want to be where I am right now, and I have to set aside work, and have that balance. Um, but having a reminder in my phone, or having some kind of schedule, like in front of me on my computer or at my easel, saying, okay, well, from 8 p.m. to midnight, this is what you're going to do. it also means that I've missed out on large chunks of entertainment that I've wanted to see. And, it's constantly being spoiled. Every time I open up Instagram or something like that, I get a whole show ruined for me because I didn't catch it in real time. Like all of these people that have just like hours of their life to kill when they're not working. Like, wow. But I don't know. I wouldn't trade it for anything. So
Yeah. And Mia, I want to hear from you too. Like, what kind of things in your day do you have to, like, that you have to plan around? And how do you organize your time in like boxes appropriate so that you can actually do all those things that you need to do in a day?
Yeah, I mean, for, up until the pandemic, I had a day job. So similar to what you both are saying, that forced my time that I was not on a shift. So like, this is the only time you have to create this project that I was creating from the ground up. And looking back on those years, I'm just like, I was so productive for how busy I was. And it's kind of nuts how that happens. But at the same time, I definitely burnt out. I feel like in early 2020, like the pandemic was almost a blessing because I wouldn't have taken that time off, and I didn't realize how burnt out I was because you're just like running on fumes. So you have to be careful with that as well. And I know we give a lot of advice too, that it's like, do what you have to do to pay the bills. And if that means working on your artwork kind of part-time, it's very easy to burn out and to like overdo it because you are basically working overtime. And like what you're saying, Eric, most people clock in, clock out, go home, have all evening to watch their shows and stuff. If your day job isn't what you want to do, and then there's other things you want to do, you kind of don't have all that time. And that makes it really difficult to have work-life balance. And so I think that definitely for those 6 years, it was kind of like necessity, right? Like I did the same thing that you did, Lauren. I signed up for conventions. I'm like, I have to have at least one new painting each show. Otherwise, there's no point in me going and just showing the same stuff. I made that for myself and also just because I wanted to create more work for my project. And it definitely helped. But yeah, coming from a fine art background, I have to say, being your own boss and making fine art, and there's no actual person telling you, like art directing your piece, and you can sort of scrap it and do something completely different if it's not working. It like I was in the studio for hours and hours working, but it definitely isn't the same kind of pressure at all as having several jobs with different bosses, with different feedback timelines and stuff like that, which is a bit more new for me. Even though I definitely don't do it as much as Eric does. So yeah, I think that for every kind of different slice of my life, it's been different in terms of time management. Long story short, where I am now is I'm basically working from home, and also I guess the caretaker at home. What is the word for that? Like I'm the person who keeps the household, I guess. So my schedule revolves around my boyfriend's work schedule, like his meetings. So when he's has a break for lunch, that's my break, and I have to make food and we eat together and stuff, and same with dinner and stuff. So I feel like after he's done with his work day, it's kind of like, okay, now I can do whatever I want. But I do work during the day. It's just that always knowing that I'm on call for whenever he doesn't he doesn't have a meeting. And so it's a different kind of, it's like literally working within pockets of time. So it took a while to get used to that. But I mean, I'm somebody who, like, in order to handle to basically wrestle my anxiety to the side and get work done, I need to just vigorously just plan every aspect of my life. So I have like daily to-do lists that I keep track of, and I check off things I do there. I break down a monthly goal to weekly and daily. And then even for the daily to-do things, like I actually write down how much time I think it'll take me, and then kind of track how long it actually took me. And each week I'm like adjusting expectations for myself. And I think I'm just somebody who has always bitten off more than I can chew. So I will say, I'm going to do 10 things this month, and it's maybe more realistic to do 5.
Yeah.
But over time, after tracking that, I'm actually now planning closer to what I can accomplish. And that actually boosts your self-esteem as somebody who, again, doesn't have a lot of feedback, like external feedback from bosses and things like that, or raises or promotions happening. You do rely on yourself and your sense of what have I accomplished? Yeah. And if you have multiple days in a row where you're like, I didn't get anything done, I failed today, it is just it compounds on your, self-esteem. And so
it's demoralizing.
It is. It absolutely is. You kind of have to set yourself up for success. And I don't mean throw yourself a softball every day, but just make your goals achievable, but just on the edge of achievable, where you're I have to push to get this, but it's actually doable if I work hard. And that's been a huge learning curve just over the pandemic, just figuring that out for myself. And last month was like the first month that it really worked. Like I got so much done. I had 3 deadlines. I worked on my story as well. I read 5 books. I did all this stuff. Like I just
wow, that's awesome, Mia.
Yeah, it was, but it was, I kind of felt burnt out after it all. So I know that I have to adjust that too. And, still searching for that perfect balance, but.
Yeah, like I think that definitely raises a good point of making sure that the goals that you have set for yourself are actually measurable in a way where you can break them down and split them out into different parts of the goal. Because I feel oftentimes when I'm looking at one big goal, I get really overwhelmed because I'm thinking about the entire package of like, okay, it's going to take so much work, so many hours to accomplish this goal. How am I going to get all this done? Blah, blah, blah. But if it's broken down like, oh, I have to do my sketch first. Okay, I can do my sketches and I can reserve this day to do my sketches. And then I have to do line art. Okay, front load all the line art. Let's put it for this day. And we work on line art in the mornings or whatever that looks like for the individual person. And then you can check that box off when you're done your line art, when you're done your color, like you can have different segments of a goal. And it doesn't have to be this one thing of like finish a book, because finish a book is like a monolith of a goal.
Yeah, you don't get to check that off until like 5 years from now or something,
You don't, not at all. And so it feels really crappy when you're just staring at that one same goal and you're like, this is not moving. I don't know what to do about this. And then oftentimes you overwhelm yourself out of doing it because the work seems so daunting that it's really hard to process. And specifically for ADHD brains, we have a whole like wall of awful. That's what they call it. This channel, How to ADHD, coined that term, but the wall of awful is like just you having to process through all the things that you need to do to accomplish this goal. And how like part of what you need to do to remove that wall of awful is to actually break it down and like visualize yourself actually doing that goal too, and being like, okay, this goal is manageable because this first part I have to do here, and then the second part I have to do here. So like by splitting it out, you make it so that it's easier for you to accomplish, that you're checking something off and that you're actually seeing how your progress is building on itself and working towards a final, solution. So that has worked a lot better for me too, because I'm one of those people who get really overwhelmed when I have a big project looming in front of me. House stuff counts for this too. Like, I'm like, oh man, I have to, clean my garage, or I have to clean out my closet. But I'm like, okay, like, first, I just need to take out the bin for the prints and then sort through those. Okay, like once that's done, then okay, next task. Now I have to take this other bin out and start sorting through this to throw away to Goodwill, et cetera, et cetera. And so like once I break stuff down by just sequence, it makes it way more feasible and way more manageable. So this can easily be applied to art too. And when I have applied it to art, it's usually been pretty successful. But I also have to remember to do that and not overwhelm myself out of actually looking at the goal holistically and planning it out, because oftentimes if I'm really stressed, I skip steps and that's never really good. So having a system in place that you get used to is always really helpful to have. So that's how I have to deal with it.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that about housework, by the way, because it's a point I wanted to bring up. I hate housework because it never ends.
It never ends.
You have to make food every single day. You have to clean every week. You have to clean. It just never stops. And I can't imagine people with families, because I'm caring for 2 people here, but that is just it drives me nuts. But the thing that shifted for me was when I put it on my to-do list and I felt accomplished that I got to check it off, because it's, my therapist always reminds me, this used to be considered a full-time job. It used to be considered,
yes,
and now it's just like you're supposed to just do it and do your career, whoever is doing it in the family. But I guess for me, it's like the way that I stop resenting it as much is being like, job well done. I got to check it off and it's part of what I accomplished each day and each week, instead of the thing that just never gets listed because it's not valued, So
yeah, definitely. And I hate doing housework too. I'm in the same boat, but it's always really nice when I get to look at the room and it's clean and I'm like, oh, I feel less stressed now because it's clean. So you can usually tell the state of my life by how messy my house is, because if it's messy, that means I'm really burnt out or depressed or just stressed, and I can't deal right now with this stuff is on the table and it's just going to have to be here until I have the mental capacity to deal with it. Because a lot of these tasks, they look like very little tasks, but it's never that one task that your mind is facing. It's always a pile of different tasks that are competing for your attention. And so oftentimes the thing doesn't get done because everything is piled in front of you. It's never just one task. So for example, for me, if the books are on the table and they need to go upstairs, that is contending with, okay, the dishes need to be done too. Okay, like I need to, before I can do like bring these books upstairs, I probably have to clean my room to make space for these books. And so all these things are actually blocking that one simple task from being done. Same with art. I'm like, okay, like I know I need to make this sketch, but before this happens, I need to do like collect all these references. But if I need to collect references, I have to go out and take photo. And it's like all this like prerequisites that pile up. And so that's also why compartmentalizing tasks helps me, because it breaks it down into manageable chunks rather than just a big fat thing of work that's just, it looks like it's insurmountable. So yeah, it's something I've had to contend with, especially lately as I've been more and more burnt out. So you know, like I hope that's helpful to break it down for other people. What about you, Eric? Do you find yourself ever having to do that, break down tasks in order to make them manageable?
Yeah, I write on the back of envelopes, like I should have like an actual to-do list, like a pad or something like that, but it usually ends up being on the back of like junk mail.
Oh
Like
man.
paint this much of this painting today. Like the arm, the face, the whatever piece of the painting has to be done. Because if I just sit there and go, okay, well, in this time that I have tonight or on the weekend, I'm just going to paint. I'm going to noodle and go over things, and I might check my phone or sit there and watch a YouTube video while I'm at my easel, right? Like wasting time.
Mm.
But if I say, no, I'm sitting here and I'm going to set a timer. And I have a timer, built into my computer that hovers over Photoshop. Um, and I have my timer on my phone and on my watch when I'm oil painting. But I set it for 20-minute intervals. And within that 20 minutes, I say, okay, I'm going to get this much of the painting done. I'm going to stop for 5 minutes and do my movie trailer YouTube binge. And then I'm going to jump right back into it for another 20 minutes, kind of like you're in art school.
Yeah, it's like Pomodoro.
And
That's awesome.
yeah.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
and then by doing that, I can quickly look at my my checklist that I have on the back of junk mail and say, and just cross out, okay, the arm is done, the hand is done, the face is done, right? It might take a couple of those 20-minute intervals, but I know that at the end of that shift of painting, I've blocked out a whole section of the piece that I otherwise would have taken a whole day to do, because I would have been bouncing around. Like I could play video games for like an hour or two. I could go sit and watch this Star Wars Clone Wars episode, you know, and then before I know it, it's 4 o'clock and you go, oh crap, I just pissed away most of the day. Right. And then my whole thing was, especially when I wasn't really being accountable for my time, was how much time did I actually spend working versus saying that I was, yes, I was in a studio, but how much of that was productive time? Right. And I was just pissing away so much time. Like Facebook, oh my God. Like any rant, I used to just, my whole thing with Facebook was I would wake up and just leave snarky comments on people's pages and stuff. Not like trolling them, but like just like haha things like I thought was funny. But then I realized like this is just such a complete waste of time. But it got me in trouble a couple of times because people are like, "Why the hell did you even write that?" I'm like, "I don't know. It just seemed like the right thing to do." But like
Oh,
I don't do that anymore because I have way more professional contacts than I used to, and I just can't be like, "Guess what I just did?" Right? No,
like it's
no,
not cute
no,
anymore.
it's not cute. It's not cute. And like I tell my wife all the time, I'm like, because I get those reminders like, here's what you did 8 years ago. I'm like, ooh,
Yeah, delete that
hey,
immediately.
like, hey, baby, like, check out, like, aren't you glad you didn't know me then? Like, yeah.
Actually, yeah.
Just like
So,
that's awful.
right. So, yeah, I have to write down stuff and, you know, sticking to those lists. is really beneficial to my whole commission or whatever it is that I'm doing. But you nothing makes you work faster than realizing that you only have a day left to do the thing.
Oh my God, yeah.
So what is that? I know we've all seen that chart where it's like the scheduled timeline for an illustration, where it's like 80% of it is just like, whatever, I'll watch Netflix, and then that last 20% is, oh my God, I gotta paint. So yeah.
I think I've said this before, but the miracles that I can produce when there's a day left are insanity. Like, I wish I could work like that all the time, because man, I'd be productive. But it requires that panic, that absolute like sheer drop panic of like, uh-oh, this needs to get done immediately. And I'm like, why does this look so good? Like, this took so little time. Why did it take me so long to finally do it?
Yeah.
All the time.
I mean, writing. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I just think about the like, it's like an adrenaline thing. Kind of like the mother that has to lift the car up over there, like to get their child out. You don't normally have that kind of power, but you call it up when it's necessary.
Yeah, and this is something very particular for ADHD brains too, like because we have like a lack of dopamine, the adrenaline kind of like pushes us to get that clarity that we've been looking for all along. And it creates that dopamine as well, of just like the interest that you have in the task, because the interest is fueled by the panicked adrenaline. And so that's when you actually get the mental focus to zero in on a task and stay there until completion. But oftentimes we can't duplicate that state of mind. And so we have to find ways to work around it instead. Because we can't always work like that. That's not healthy, and it's not conducive to any good working relationships. So it requires a lot of adjustment. But what were you about to say, Mia?
No, sorry, it was I think it was kind of a slight tangent, but no, yeah, it kind of was, because I was just saying, when it comes to writing, that definitely happens. You have a big gap where you're just like, I'm not writing, but all that time you are processing, you are working on the story in your head. It's like in there, in the juices and all that crap. Like even it feels like no work at all because there's no words on the page. It's actually work being done. And so in a weird way, I wonder if that works with art as well, where it's just like, you might be playing video games, you might be watching Netflix, but something about the visuals there might be doing some work in there that you can't quantify because it's not on your assignment, right? But yeah, obviously it's not ideal if you just like, you had 5 days and you only used one of them to paint. But maybe, if that gets the job done, it's not the worst thing in the world. It's just like, we feel bad about it because we know we had those 5 days. But I guess what I'm saying is, like, it doesn't completely disappear. It's still being worked on, and your brain actually needs that. What you were doing with the Pomodoro thing, Eric, the 20 minutes of focus, 5 minutes of a break. I was actually reading a book that's like about the science about how your brain actually learns. And it talks about just that. You can force your brain to focus for 20 minutes. Like,
yeah,
if you write it enough, you can focus for 20 minutes, and almost like that's too much, like beyond 20 or 25, your brain does start like wandering. So it's good to give it that break, because then the 5 minutes that you're not doing anything, it has time to sort of do that processing. They have different words for it, and I'm just keep using the word processing, but it's almost like a daydream state where your brain gets to kind of absorb the information you either were studying or working on when you were focusing, and then it actually synthesizes it. So people who just kind of work without any breaks, 8 hours straight, that's actually not the best way to learn or to grow or to, you know what I mean? Like, you don't actually retain any of that. So having breaks, whether it's 5 minutes in between your full break, or it's breaks to go spend time with your family, or breaks to go out into nature, all that stuff helps you retain information more, actually.
It's true. And the Pomodoro technique has helped me too, because having that sprint of work, you are able to set, it's exactly like compartmentalizing the work and breaking things down into tasks, because at the end of each 20 minutes, I usually have a little goal. I'm like, okay, after this 20 minutes, I want to have the facial line art done. After this 20 minutes, I want to have, like the hair done. Like, and so it actually allows me to see each piece in different chunks. And once I've finished, a full Pomodoro, which is a cycle of, I think it's 320 minutes and 325 minutes, and then a 15-minute break in the middle. Like, I have like a set goal. And so when I see that being done, because I can usually accomplish it as long as I know that there's a deadline at the end of each 20 minutes, that has always been really helpful for me, because it guarantees that I'm like, okay, like, I don't have to force myself to focus for so long that I lose attention, because it usually takes about 20 minutes for me to lose attention anyway. it's so as long as I go back to it after those 5 minute intervals, I'm actually in a pretty good spot. So it actually really, it's really helpful for brains like mine that don't like the, to focus for long periods of time and like don't have the dopamine to do so. It spaces it out for you. So it might be something that can really work. And that's the Pomodoro technique, if anybody didn't catch that. Pomodoro. It's an Italian timing technique, I believe.
Oh, fun. I know.
Yeah.
I just know the
tomato
little
timer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My mom had
Pomodoro,
one
I
of
think
those
it's
when I was growing up, so I remember.
That's awesome.
I'd never heard of it. Until you said it. I just figured I would just treat my working process, my work day as if I was sitting at the easel in college. So
Mm-hmm.
when that egg timer went off, man, we would bolt out of our seats. Or at least I would. I mean, some of the more studious students would be like, yes, I'm working on my skin tones and blah, 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 my flesh and blah, 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 this Rembrandt paint color. And like, I'm going to go run down the hallway real quick. Right. That's me. But
and you were doing it right.
You have the healthier working method.
Yeah. But yeah, that's, I don't know.
Great minds think alike. You got it.
Yeah. Art school will fool you into thinking that you really do have to be at that easel or that computer, like literally for 8 hours sprints, and you don't get up and you don't take breaks or anything like that. They're just like, you have to sit there and get it done. It's like, that's not, like Mia was saying, that's not healthy at all. Like, you need to have your brain take breaks. Like, you can't just stare at something for that long. Like, not even just mentally, but physically, that's bad for your body. Like, stand up, move around, like stretch, do something. Because people get carpal tunnel from, sitting through that. Like, people get back problems from sitting like that. Like, you can't do that. You have to break it up somehow. So, definitely the better technique is what you were doing, Eric. So don't worry about that.
No, and I've also realized that time management, I have to squeeze in physical activity.
Mm-hmm.
I have to make the time for that. That has to be a part of my checklist.
Same.
20 minutes to do this, 20 minutes to do that, because I found that when I was just staying in my seat for extended periods of time, I would stand up and like my left cheek would be numb. You're just like, oh God. It's just like you just fall out on the floor and be like, what? Like, this isn't normal, right? No, but nobody else have that. But that's probably TMI. But
I also fold my legs
too.
Yeah, I fold my legs on my chair, which is probably not great either. And I've had my leg fall asleep, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, I've just been sitting here for like 2 hours.
Right.
Right. It's like, oh, and you get to suddenly straighten it. And you're like, dread having to straighten your leg after sitting there like that for so long. You're like, oh, this is gonna really suck. This is gonna hurt a lot.
But it's then you hit your 40s, and then all of a sudden muscles that you never even bothered to look up before start hurting. You got to look up. You're like, why does this hurt? What am I doing? Like, oh my God, it's a mess. So yeah, like if you're at home, if you're just working from home, making the time to not only make great art or do whatever it is that you do, but find the time to move around. It's going to pay off in the end, because you don't want to find yourself on WebMD going, why does this hurt?
And then WebMD is like, you have cancer all the time. It's like,
Straight
please
up.
Stop. It's lupus.
Every single one never lupus cancer, apparently.
It's like, it's not the simple thing. It's not, you just haven't been sitting there for too long. You just have straight up cancer, like your whole ass cheek. That's what it is.
It's like, instead of WebMD always saying it's cancer, they should just say you probably haven't slept, because that's usually the root of all problems is mostly you probably haven't slept, or you're stressed, or both.
You're stressed,
yeah.
Or you haven't seen the sun in like 2 weeks or a month.
Like
Stress
honestly,
is the worst.
yeah, honestly,
Yeah.
there was a weekend where I had just been out in the sun all like for both days, and I'm like, wow, I wonder why I have so much energy all of a sudden. I'm like, oh, I haven't seen the sun before, which is why. But you know, it's interesting. You also bring up age, Eric, and I think one of the things that a lot of people beat themselves up over is the fact that they're not working like they used to. They're not working like they did as students, or they're not working like they did at this stage of their life. And I don't think that's fair to, you know, to ourselves to judge us against our earlier selves, because our brains were a little bit different back then. They're maybe a little bit more flexible, a little bit more elastic, and you were able to produce, you know, like dopamine, or you were able to get that focus or that passion. Perhaps that was before you spent 10 years burning yourself out, or maybe that was before you had to spread yourself so thin between balancing different tasks or family or what have you. So holding yourselves to the same standards that you were at when you were in college, or when you were a student, or when you were like, you know, you had less responsibilities. Don't do that, because that's what I did. And I'm like, why can't I work like I did in college? And I'm like, so you're not in college anymore. That's why you can't work like you are in college. When you're in college, that's all you have to focus on. Well, you know, hopefully, like maybe some people have to work and some people have other things, but for the most part, college is your main priority if you're a full-time student. And so you're going to focus on things as you're a full-time student. But as we get out older, as we get out, we have more things surrounding us, more responsibilities, more things to look after. And your time management and the way you process your work is just not going to be the same. So instead of thinking about your past self and trying to get back to it, make sure that you're working with your present self and giving yourself healthy habits so that you can adjust for your own lifestyle, for your own brain, and for your own working methods. So you have to find what works for you. That's definitely something that I've struggled with. And, you know, and trying to still get out of the habit of like thinking about how I used to be versus how I am now, because it's just not the same. It's barely the same person anymore, even. But there's just way more stuff happening now. So there's no way I'm ever going to be able to get back to that kind of method. So, yeah. Because like, how did you manage your time when you were younger? I'm just so curious now.
Me?
About like, yeah, well, either of you, like, yeah, let's do Eric first. Like baby Eric, how's baby Eric's time management?
Oh my God. I mean, so I still worked late into the evening. But I'm probably the wrong person. This is like my all right.
No.
No, because all right. So you want the real talk? All right.
Yeah.
So here's how my college experience was a complete accident as far as me gaining the technical skills that I needed before graduation. I tailored my entire schedule around being home in time to watch Star Trek. It was straight up roll of the dice, because I needed to have classes that were be on specific days so that I could hit the train station to be back home so that I could watch Star Trek Voyager and know that I had completed all of my work or had very little of it left to do before Deep Space Nine came on. So, yeah.
That's
Like,
not a bad
That's
thing,
not
though.
bad.
Like if you had an evening job, you'd have to do the same thing. You know, your
Yeah.
priorities.
right. And then, right. So then I had the evening job, but then the evening job was on days when Star Trek wasn't on. So I was like, all right, so that works out. So it was, well, let me be in this painting class because this works. And it was just like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm doing this. But at the end, it was like, wow, okay, I'm getting I'm getting results for these classes. But that was that was
Yeah.
how I arranged my time. And I never even told my mom that. I'm like, why are you home so early? Don't worry about it. I'm like, I'll be in my room, right?
Don't worry about it.
But yeah, I'm like, I missed out on the whole college experience and hanging out and doing all that stuff because it's like time. Well, like you got to have your priorities, man. And back then there was no Netflix. You missed it, you missed it.
Yeah.
And I didn't know
it's true.
I didn't know if I just waited, I'd be able to catch up on all those episodes.
Netflix came in a little envelope and a CD in the mail or DVD in the
Yes,
mail.
it did.
And if they
Right.
didn't have it, you couldn't get it. You still had to wait 5 days for it to arrive.
Well,
Yes,
back when I was
make
in
sure you
college,
sent it back. Oh.
I mean, the video store, like if you wanted to see these episodes, you had to have a whole shelf of VHS cassettes,
Yeah.
Mhm.
right? So good luck, but I was like, I don't have space for that. I'll just make the time.
Yeah.
But no, but before I had like real responsibility, yeah, I would just stay up sometimes all night to get stuff done, and still had energy to get up and go to school or go to work. But you know, your energy levels change as you get older.
Yeah.
So like I'll say to myself, yeah, I can power through and get these sketches done by like 1:30 in the morning. And then that adult part of me kicks in and goes, you idiot, your son will be up at 6 a.m. Right? Like you're done. Right? So go wash your brushes or go shut everything off and go to sleep.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Mhm. How's baby Mia? How was your baby version time management?
Oh man. I mean, I wish I had a cooler reason to miss out on the college experience, but it was like
Cooler?
well, yeah, because I was just like a nerdy workaholic that just didn't, I was too shy to make friends, you know, and I didn't hang out afterwards. I just went home and did homework and just painted and drew the whole time. I had no life. That's how I did it, you know, it was no balance whatsoever. But the thing is, I don't think I ever really felt burnt out, partially because I was just never one of those people that even in my youth could do all-nighters. Like I'm one of those people that needs a ton of sleep to function. So I think that's probably why I worked all the time, because I knew I couldn't work all night. So I had to work during the day. And we had an hour commute to and from school. So it was like a 2-hour round trip to go to school. So yeah, I mean, honestly, I was happy doing that. But looking back, I'm like, yeah, I definitely missed out on a lot of experiences of, you know, showing even more people what an idiot I was in my teens. So bullet dodged, but
Yeah. I'm sure
yeah,
you're not an idiot.
no, but I definitely was, because I was very what is the word, like very sheltered growing up, like up until like my mid-20s actually. So it's probably for the better. But I think part of it was because I would work so much, and that's the reason why I'm wanted to bring that up, is that I feel like actually the most like sustainable my life has been just like not making my life all work. And I think for some reason like when people really want to get into a career of art, it takes so many years to actually master all these skills, right? To even get noticed, to even get the jobs, to even continue doing the jobs and compete with all these people who are already there. So I get the drive to just make your life work and to just study, and people shame each other for how much they're studying or not studying. And at the end of the day, it's just like, I just think that you should kind of take a step back every now and then and just look at your life and be like, am I happy with it? If I was to die tomorrow, am I happy with how things are going, you know? Because you don't want your life to just be work. As much as you might love art, you don't want your life to just only be art. Or maybe you do, but I don't. I don't anymore.
Yeah.
I just remember putting a lot of pressure on myself though.
Yeah.
Like you're saying, Mia, to be as good as I could possibly be before I left school. Because I'd say in like 95% of my classes, I was the only Black guy in the room. Right. So from my parents' point of view, it was, are we wasting our money?
Yeah.
And for me, it was, I need to prove that I'm not wasting their money. So I need to be working on, getting my skills, getting my technical skill level to a certain point. And that meant putting in hours and hours of time.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to be one of those college students that just went to school, partied nonstop, and then came out of it and was like, oh man, that was the best, but don't go into that career because, you just completely just, flake out. I also didn't want anything to distract me from my goals. right? It was a lot. I put a lot of pressure on myself just to prove myself, to prove that I belonged in the room.
Yeah.
A lot of the times with people that were amazing painters, like there was like just a stellar cast of people that I went to school with that are all rock star illustrators right now. And we were all side by side, like looking at each other, like, yeah, like, so it was rough, but um, yeah, it's priorities. It's,
Yeah.
what's important to you,
But
and
I'm glad you
make the
said that
time.
though. I'm glad you said that though about like the pressure to prove yourself, because I feel like there's probably a lot of kids out there that feel the same way as you did. And same with like, my parents were immigrants to this country. They came with nothing. And for me to basically throw their money, college money away by like pissing away my education, like it was not an option. I had to be the best. I had to prove that they spent their money right and that they sacrificed for me. Like when you think that it's like you're supposed to do better than the previous generation as well, it is a lot of pressure you put on yourself, or at least that I did at that time. All of that being said, because I'm saying, I know there's probably a lot of kids that are under this kind of pressure. Your body is first, and it will give out. If it gives out on you, you can't continue. So it's just like
Yeah.
you have to like, I guess the reason why we're talking about time management as well is that it's not just managing the time so you can get the work done. It's managing the time so you can get the work done and live your life, ideally, and there will be times of your life where you can't do both, but don't plan for your whole life to be like that, because that's just unsustainable.
Definitely. Yeah. And I come from that kind of that place too, where I feel like my mom, like my parents, set me up for success, like trying to make sure that I was set up for success by making sure I went to the classes, making sure that, I was enrolled into college. And so I never even considered that like failure could be an option. Like I was always just pushing myself and trying to make sure that I was getting the best work I could done. And, I was definitely the kind of student who could do all-nighters and who would just like stay up. And my senior year, I did a 120-page illustrated like book. Like why did I do that? Like, it's so stupid. But I was just laser focused on it because I was just working towards this big goal. And I'm like, I have to get it done no matter what. I have to get it done. I have to be impressive. I have to, show my family that I, had deserved to be here, and that I did everything I could. And the burnout after that was just intense. And I'm like, why can't I make another, like, why is it so hard for me to make an illustration? It's you can't burn that hard and that bright and not face consequences for it. It just doesn't happen. So, I always look back at that self and be like, that was very irresponsible of me to do, but I didn't know. And that was a lesson that I had to learn. Now that I've learned it, it's knowing not to go back to that place and trying to get me to do so much work that I stress myself out. But yeah, but it's because it's really important. Like that senior year in college, like I wasn't really focusing on the school life. I wasn't focusing on, playing video games. And I would even be the person to kind of like look at my friends like sideways, like, why is she playing video games right now? Why is he out like with, friends right now? Doesn't he have a senior project to do? Blah, blah, blah. And like they're prioritizing their life. And they probably had a much more fulfilling senior experience because they were prioritizing their life, because that was the most important thing. And it's definitely what you said of like, you have to make time for your life. You have to make time to live, because you can't just make it be all about the work, because you're not going to, I mean, your work is not even going to be better for it. Like if you're just like focusing on your work, you're not experiencing anything. You're not consuming any content. You're not getting inspired by the world out there. Make time for that too. It's really, really important. Yeah, otherwise you're just this one thing. And I mean, some people are just that one thing and they're amazing at it, but it's better. I think it's better to just be a well-rounded person and have different experiences, and then come back to your easel, to your computer, to whatever it is that you draw in, and convert those experiences into art. That's what you got to do. So manage your time and appropriately to do that. So what do you do outside of your art? Mia, I'll start with you.
I actually like builds breaks out around every meal. So like, and then my partner and I will keep watching something either after lunch or after dinner. And then at the end of the night, as a way to unwind, we watch stuff too. So we love watching shows or films and stuff like that, and love analyzing them like a couple story nerds like afterwards.
Nerds.
Trying to write our own stories. I know.
Oh, I love it. That's great.
But that's one of my favorite things to do. And I love that we can do that together. And, pre-pandemic times, we would love to, anytime we'd go on a trip anywhere, whether it was just like driving up the coast or whatever, we are complete museum nerds. So we love like looking at art in person. And it's like, I literally could not have the more perfect partner that loves geeking out about the same things as me, which is like just a complete joy.
Awesome.
But also just like calling my friends, like once a week or whatever. Before the pandemic, we used to have dinner parties at one of our friends' house. Like we all would do like a potluck and each bring food and just like hang out and play board games or whatever. It was just, I really miss that. We've done that a few times over the past year, but I guess it's like in those times I can step away from my work and not think about what I have to do and just enjoy that time for what it is. And being out in nature is nice too, but I just definitely don't get enough of that. But I'm a pretty low maintenance person in terms of what things satisfy me outside of doing art.
That's fair. What about you, Eric?
It's mainly just family stuff, family time. I probably was that textbook case of single-minded individual always talking about or making art of some kind, or playing a video game, while thinking about art.
It's never off.
It's never off. But I don't know. I guess I'm still working on that, because and that's been brought to my attention a couple times. Like, all you do is talk about art. I'm like, so?
And what's it to you?
But I don't know. Sometimes I think about it as a bad thing. Like, I'm not a well-rounded individual because I don't have friends that are mechanics or like random other careers or something like that. Like, most of the people I know are in entertainment industry or artists, right? But yeah, when I'm not talking to them, I'm playing with Thomas the Tank Engine or something.
I would say that's plenty well-rounded, Eric.
Yeah,
like you don't have to also be interested in like I don't know, like NASA, like rocket sciences or anything like that. Like I think it's not about that. It's just about you look at something that's not art and you spend time with that too. And your family is not art. Your family is your family.
Yeah.
And it could inspire you to do more art. You can be thinking about art, but like that's something else that's outside of your regular job. So it counts.
Yeah.
I gossip worse than Wendy Williams. So like, it's like, y'all know that. Y'all know that. So I'm like, that's kind of my outlet, is like to be like, oh girl.
Oh girl, stop.
I used to watch that show all the time. And then we sit there in the middle of our day like, oh my God, what's going to happen next?
Oh my goodness.
She got all the dirt. But yeah. And then, but like keeping it to myself, that's like, you shouldn't be telling people all this stuff that you've been hearing from all these different sources. Just like, I should stop with you. But like, next time I gotta tell somebody. no, that's that part of, I'm still growing, I'm still learning, right? Oh God,
that's the beautiful thing about life. We're all learning and growing,
right? Yeah,
like this is just a part of the journey, so it's okay. Yeah, I think another part of it is definitely giving yourself the space to learn and know that you've probably gotten it wrong before, and you get to try different things, and maybe it doesn't work and you do better and you try again. But it's okay to be learning. It's okay to not have it perfect. I certainly don't have it perfect. And I've been in my career for a while now, and there's still plenty I still have left to learn. I think each of us have something that we still need to learn. And I don't think, we don't stop learning. Like my mom always says, like, you don't stop learning until you die. Like that's just what it is. Like every day is a new experience. And So, it's okay if you try something and you're like, oh, the Pomodoro technique didn't work for me, or, oh, compartmentalizing these tasks didn't work for me. It's all right. As long as you find something that does, like you get to keep learning, keep growing and trying new things. And when you land on the thing that works for you, that's your technique. And if it stops working for you after a certain point, that's fine. You could try another one. Because even the techniques that you establish don't always continue to work. I'm definitely a testament to that. I've tried many different things over the years. Like I was really good at my bullet journal in 2020. And then I kind of fell out of it because what I realized was that my object permanence is bad. And so in order to have a successful schedule, I have to have it in front of my face. That's an adaptation that I've had to make out of my own personal thought process. So, find what works for you and, adapt and try different things, and it's okay. But try not to beat yourself up about it. Because, it's almost like advice to myself, honestly. I am one of the hardest people on myself. And so if I try something that doesn't work and I'm just like, oh, I failed. Like I'm not good enough at this to successfully manage my time, or I'm not good enough to focus, or, blah, blah, blah. But we eventually have to start dismantling that negative self-talk because it's not serving anybody. So hopefully that helps anybody who's going through it like I am, because it's been a lifelong journey, I think. But yeah, like the way your brain works, is there anything that you want to try in the future that you've seen that might work for you, or just like any techniques that you're thinking about changing in your schedule? Like what's your ideal look like? Let's start with Eric. What's your ideal time management schedule look like? And are you on it or not?
I'm pretty close to it right now. I've got it. It was touch and go back when I only had one kid, but now that I have two, it's like well oiled. Like I know exactly how much time, and I've been more productive in like the past, I guess, 7 years than I have in my entire career.
Wow.
And I don't want to say I've more prolific. I haven't done like a ton of, oil paintings or something like that, like some people, but I think that splitting my time between teaching and illustration definitely cuts into my overall productivity. But when I am doing it, I'm laser focused. So like there's no PlayStation time, there's no movies, there's like none of that stuff until I set aside time to do it. But I don't wander around unfocused like I used to. There would be whole gaps in my day, like I talked about, where I would just be doing anything but art, but still say that I was working. But now it's like, I know if it doesn't get done by like 2:30, 3:00 before the kids come home, it's not getting done until 9:00 at night. Then there's that huge chunk in the day that I am not allowed to be in this room because they will come looking for me. But yeah, that's my existence, and that's cool.
Yeah. That's awesome. What about you, Mia? What does your good look like? And are you on it, or how close are you to that?
I'm not entirely close. Am I allowed to give a fantasy version where capitalism?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's what your good looks like. That's your fantasy version.
Well, my fantasy version requires capitalism to not exist, so that's completely out the window. But and the reason why I say that is because I wish I could just take my time on things, and just like, again, go back to that sort of fine art mindset, I guess. But I know that the flip side is that I would get less things finished if I took my time on things. But I really responded to what Nyla said in our last interview, where she was saying basically there's some projects that just need to be taking their time. You can't rush them. But unfortunately, the things that rush us are these deadlines, are the need to pay the bills. And so that would be my fantasy version, would just be like, I wish there were some projects at least mixed in there where I could just take my time and it didn't matter. but that being thrown out the window because it's probably not going to happen. I guess more of what I've been doing, like starting the last month, and I actually wrote a really detailed post for my patrons this month about it, just kind of saying like, here's all the things that worked, here's all the things that I think didn't. But also I just realized that going forward, every month is not going to look the same for me, and I'm okay with that, because there was like the Simon Sinek quote where he's talking about, instead of like your goal for your company or for yourself being productivity, the goal should be health. And I really responded to that, because I feel like if your goal is health, then you're willing to change your system to, you know, to that end, as opposed to just like, what's the output every time and how can we maximize the output? Like, especially for artists, I think if your health is the main thing that you prioritize, you're actually keeping your creative juices alive, you know? And so
Yeah.
it's just like anything I can do to maintain, to not burn out creatively and to produce at the same time. I know that's a very like vague answer, but that's kind of what I want to go towards. And I don't know, just be really aware every month of like, what are the things that really burn me out? Like last week, actually, it was having a really bad mental health week. And I realized it's because I hadn't exercised, and I had been exercising that whole month. So it's like my brain got used to the endorphins. And then when I took it away, all of a sudden it was like a crash. So just being more aware, like what are the things that I take away and add, and like how do they affect my mood? And as long as I can just like balance my mood long enough so that I can create things and not feel you know, super stressed doing them, that would be ideal. But I know that's a super loosey-goosey answer.
No, it's a great answer, I think, because it requires you to be aware of your mental state and yourself and the things that you may have been falling off on. And not everybody has that kind of awareness. Some people get hyper focused and just like, okay, like I have to like just task based, but understanding that things like exercise, things like even going out in the sun, going for walks, all of those things play into affecting your overall mood and productivity. And if you start, like, if you just like randomly stop doing one of those things cold turkey, it can, you know, dramatically affect you.
Yeah.
So it's really important to be self-aware. I like that a lot. Yeah. For me, my good looks like is definitely being able to set aside the time for me to pursue my creative endeavors. And right now I've just started a new job. So I know that my schedule is just a little bit wonky as I'm getting used to the new time schedule and just adjusting to it. It's also a lot of mental energy to go to, you know, thinking about what I have to do for this new job. But once that dust kind of settles, I want to be able to have these days that I am just focused on my art, like my own art and my personal stuff. And so that I can get those illustrations that I've had on my plate forever finally started, and get the writings that I've wanted to do started, because I have like 4 stories that I really like want to do, and probably a Kickstarter that I'm doing next year for a children's book. We'll talk about that later. But there's a lot of things that I want to do this year, and most of them are for me. And it's the first year where I'm not being bogged down by so much freelance that I can't focus on it. So there really is no excuse aside from, okay, like now that I have this new job, now that I have a more open schedule, I want to be able to dedicate my Fridays to honing my artistic skills and working on my personal projects. And then over the weekend, you know, go out, hang out with friends or go bouldering, make sure I'm exercising and coming back to work on Monday fresh and ready to go. But it's intentionally setting aside that box of time just for me. I think that's really where I want to get to. So far, that's what my good looks like. So we'll see if I can get there. Fingers crossed. But, and again, I think it's okay for right now for me to be wide open because my situation has changed. So obviously that takes some adaptation, and I have to be kind to myself to give myself that time to adapt. So, you know.
Yeah, totally.
But yeah, I think that's about it. Is there anything that we want to leave our viewers with? Eric, do you have anything that you want to promote?
Actually, yes, I do have something I'd like to promote. I did a children's book. It was it was a major part of my year last year. And speaking of time management, it was a master class in trying to juggle doing magic cards, book covers, an entire children's book, 40-page children's book, and teach and pay attention and not neglect family all at the same time. Yeah. Was it easy? No. Did my head nearly explode? Yes. But it was a fun experience. I got the opportunity. I was chosen to do a children's book on the with Colin Kaepernick, football player, social activist, um, talking about his childhood and being biracial and being adopted and all of that. So it covers a lot of stuff in this very short, cute story, and it was a lot. It was just a lot to do, and we've talked about imposter syndrome and being burnt out and overwhelmed and things like that. But uh, I remember when when the time came to do it, I was giving Mia the same advice because she was talking about not feeling good enough or not feeling like she deserved something. And I thought, you know what? This is actually happening to me. And they could have chosen anybody, but they chose me for this.
Mhm.
So now I have to step up and show them that they made the right choice. And it comes out April 5th. Um, if you have a child in your life, you want to read them a good book, uh, you know, uh, please go to the store, support it, and let me know. Let me know if you like it.
That's awesome.
That's about it.
I'm really excited for you.
Thanks.
That's
Thank you.
dope.
I know, it's so great. Can we pre-order it or is it not available?
Yeah.
Oh
Where can we
yeah,
pre-order
it's you can pre-order on Amazon. You can go through any of your local bookstores.
Link is in the comments.
Yeah.
Or not in the
Yeah.
comments, in the description.
in the thingy.
In the thingy.
And, but yeah, it was like a #1 bestseller.
What?
Pre-orders. No, #1
What?
pre-orders or something like that
No
last year.
way.
Like within like 5 days
Oh my
That's
God.
on
awesome.
Amazon. So yeah, they know people are going to get it. So
That's dope.
I'm just excited that they spelled my name right, honestly. But
Oh,
no, it's
man.
fun. It was a fun experience. So yeah, go to your local bookstore, check it out. April 5th comes out April 5th. So
Sweet. Mia, do you have anything you want to promote?
I don't. I'm not really on social media or anything like that. I'm like working behind the scenes, but the only place I really share my work is on my Patreon page. It's my name after the whatever the backslash or whatever that thing is called. I don't even know. That's how old I am.
So sorry, my screen is in like a different order. Follow me as no, that's wrong. Follow me as Patreon. I had my video flipped. I was like, wait, that's not the right way.
You were pointing the right way originally.
Oh, perfect. Okay. For me it was different. But yeah, follow me on Patreon. Her Patreon is in the description. The thing I have to promote is I was honored to do a cover for Marvel's Women of Marvel series. I got to do a Shuri Marvel cover. It's coming out March 9th. You can pre-order it now, and it's a variant for that comic. So give it a if you're interested in having a variant cover done by me, go ahead and pre-order that. I also put the link in the description, and super excited about it. Again, it's also the thing of like, I feel imposter syndrome, but also this went really nicely and they were very easy to work with, and it was just a joy to do all around. So I feel really honored to be able to be a part of something like that. And yeah, it's pretty crazy and pretty great. Also, Deck of Wonders, the Kickstarter tabletop game I was doing last year, is coming out this year, so keep an eye out for it. It's getting printed now, so that project will be in the hands of people soon, and you can still order copies on the Deck of Wonders website. So go ahead and check that out, and get your copy if you're interested in cool kind of deck building games that you can play solo. So all the art is done by me. Got some help with the flats colors, but all the illustrations are done by me, and it was a fun time, so check it out. But I think that's about it, everybody. So thank you so much for joining us. And I hope you share your time management styles in the comments in the chat when this episode airs. And just, let us know what your methods are, or let us know even if this helped you at all, because we always love to hear from you. So thank you so much for joining us. If you're interested in having more conversations with us and with the other people who watch the show, join the Painted in Color podcast discussion group on Facebook. And, check out our other pages as well. We're on Twitter, we're on Instagram, and we're on Facebook. So check us out there if you're interested in more content from us. But we will see you next time. Thank you for joining us. Happy time management, y'all. Bye.